president is a genial person, we know that. I cannot put aside the fact that probably dealing with women who held views might have been an uncomfortable experience for him. But I was careful to be respectful all the way through. Right? And Chair, after that you say this. But on the face of it, it seems to me, and you are free to comment, it seems to me that unless you tell us something else that happened that might have a bearing on this, it seems to me that what you were told on the phone by the former president amounted to saying Mr. Marocha was going to continue as CEO of Eskom, and there was nothing really to be done about, as far as the president was concerned, about the board's view that he had offered to resign, and they had accepted that. Chair, I know that you said it's better to have a judge who tells you what he thinks, and I accept that you may well say, I express what I think on this issue. The problem with putting a proposition, because it looks like a proposition from the judge, it's not volunteered by the witness. It's extracted out of the witness by the chair. And so that proposition on its own gives the impression that the chair has a particular concluded version or proposition to make to the witness. Now, I appreciate the fact that you have a role to ask questions, but I think it is in the nature of the questions and comments. The second one.
Well, before you go to this,
yes.
Is that the second one on the passage or another passage?
No, well, not on the part. We can deal with the passage.
Oh, okay. You see, I think what was happening here is I had listened to the witness. She had said certain things yes. about what Mr. Zuma had said to her in a telephone conversation. And I sought to clarify from her whether my understanding of what she was telling me was correct. And you will see that I say, on the face of it, this seems to me to be what you are saying. But also it seems when she responds, it's quite important, it seems important. She doesn't say, yes, that's what I mean. She says, that is one possibility. Certainly. Another possibility is that she puts another possibility, which might mean I sought to have clarification of what she meant, and in responding, she said, well, it could mean two things. I just mentioned that
I think you're correct. I think, Chair, these are not open and shut questions, but that is the danger of a presiding officer putting a proposition rather than, I will never fault Mr. Pretorius for putting a proposition. You are a very powerful man sitting there, Chair. And when you put a proposition to witnesses, once they assume, especially if it's a proposition, once they assume that the chair is with me here, it's one of those things you can leave to the evidence leader, because that witness will lurch on what they think is your proposition, is your predisposition. And therefore, I'm not criticizing, Chair, that as a blanket issue, your comments are bad. I'm saying these comments that are put as propositions open themselves to the risk of witnesses who come here to take chances sent by as political missiles of others, offshoots of a particular agenda. And when they see that you put a proposition about the men they really want to see go down, they may latch onto that and think that's the route they want to take because the chair seems inclined. And even if, Chair, it's not your intention. And may I say this, one of the difficult things about recusal is also that who are we to know your intentions? One of the things missing intellectually in the debate about recusal is how do we determine that someone can say, you know what, I am biased. Say, I did not come here to present expecting that answer to anybody, not because you have no integrity, because human beings have a very low capacity for self-reflection because we don't see ourselves. So, Chair, I'm saying that comment on its own, not with the background I've given, may look mild.
Okay.
The next one, Chair, you say, did you get an impression that there might have been private meetings between the President and Mr. Maroga? Chair, we put that with the others because there again, a proposition is put. And it's a proposition in the context where this witness, of course, has come to tell you how bad Mr. Zuma is. None of them, they've all had come to tell you that, all of them, that they are perfect, he's not. And so, when you put that proposition, you actually plant in the mind of a witness as chair what I said, an understanding by that witness that, here is the inclination of the chair. He thinks this, let me go there. And for a witness who's watching you, who's accused, about whom they are talking, spewing all sorts of things from their moral high ground, he sits believing reasonably, I think, that this is an engagement between you and people who are parroting a version that the Commission finds convenient. And then, Chair, she says, of course, exactly what I'm saying. She says, yes, and that impression, it is in paragraph, says something, I forget which paragraph. It's just the example, I underline that to show to you what political witnesses who come here before you, because all of them do to latch onto a proposition from you that they think is an inclination they've come to give you. And then later, Chair, you say this to her. Of course, it's polite, you have to thank her. But we say this because we also have noticed that those witnesses were treated with a certain level of deference about what they say. And then you say this, Chair, to Ms. Hogan right at the end, and I'm going to move away from your engagement with her. Thank you very much, Ms. Hogan, for those words. She had just praised you, that she appreciates it, and thank you all for the remaining of these 3 days instead of one that was envisaged, all sorts of things. And then, Chair, you say this to her, thank you very much, Ms. Hogan, for those words, and I don't think that's our complaint. And I thank you on behalf of everybody in the Commission, all of whom appreciate your words. I have no doubt from the interactions that I receive from ordinary South Africans every day, whether I am in a mall or in any public space. And for many South Africans who happen to have a way of sending messages to me, the messages that I get from them are amazing. The sentiments that you have expressed about the Commission, I can assure you that they are shared by very, very many ordinary South Africans. Of course, a very great number of South African population is Christian. And so there are lots of people who say, we are praying for you. Chair, it goes on and on. I mean, what is the complaint about this polite engagement? Is that, Chair, having the context of your discussion with her and what seems to be your inclination and your kind of consideration of the approval received from outside the four corners of this room, itself appears, I will not use the word improper, appears irrelevant to say to this witness, you thank because of how you are appreciated when you walk down the mall and all of those. And so read that whole paragraph without taking you, Chair, we've underlined it. The point we seem to make, we want to make is that comment and the others we will refer you to, Chair. The next one is Mr. Godan. paragraph 53.6. And we say it was more evident when Mr. Godan was here. It was obvious that the chairperson seemed to accept his bona fides and viewed him as a conveyor of universal truth about state capture. And then Mr. Zuma says in the affidavit, I do not say this lightly, but rely on the transcript which reveals this disturbing deference to Mr. Godan. In particular, this is where the comment of the chair to him. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you very much. Before Mr. Pretorius begins, I just want to thank you, Minister Godan, for coming forward to assist the Commission. We have been making a call to all South Africans who may have information about the matters that we are investigating to come forward, and we have made a call to President, past ministers, deputy ministers. And then at the end, and we are grateful for that, and we are grateful that you also have come forward. Thank you very much. Viewed on its own, that's not a problem. But you've said in that comment to him that there are people who've not responded, including the president. And so the comment to him, that deference to him, and the comment that we've made a call to the president is in line with what I said is false, that he doesn't want to come. And therefore it gives that impression. And then you say to him...
You refer to the president,
yes, yes, you do.
To president. I think that must, well, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking may have been presidents, past ministers, I'm not sure, but one may have to...
That's why I said,
I doubt that I meant a specific president. I doubt that. But
Chair, I won't doubt your. Yeah. But I'm saying that is the risk we face. Is that I have to present to the very person, the only one who knows his intentions.
Yeah.
Then, Chair, you say, okay, that paragraph appears to me, and you must tell me if you understand it differently. Appears to be an acknowledgement by the ruling party that the leadership structure that it had up to that stage were failing to arrest corruption. And these are the practices that are mentioned there. Is that your understanding of the paragraph as well? Now, this comment is similar to the one I was saying about Ms. Hogan, where you make, it's a question, and I know in many, Chair, you say if, and you say the prima facie view or whatever, but the fact of the matter, I would like the Chair to read them together with an open mind and see what impression they gave. And then after, at the end, you say that. Now, straight about, we have no doubt here that which president you meant. Unlike the other paragraph, you say,
yes.
I take it from what you say in paragraph 34, last sentence, in the event it would appear that he ignored the suggestion. I take it that the former president did not articulate his views in regard to the suggestion you made about what processes you were thinking.
I'm sorry, where are you reading now? I want to check this time because of the reference to president.
Yes, Chair. Okay, Chair, let me give, if you go to paragraph 53.6 of the affidavit.
Yes.
And go down to the comment.
Oh, okay, yes, now I see.
At the end of the next page. Yes. And there can be no doubt which president you meant here. You say, I take it from what you say in paragraph 34, last sentence, in the event it would appear that he ignored the suggestion. I take it that former president did not articulate his views in regard to the suggestion you made about what process you were thinking should be followed. And then he says, and I'm reading both because of what I say witnesses are likely to do when they think you're so inclined. Well, in the event it was ignored, I think, well, at that stage, and then Mr. Nene needs to tell you what followed after the elections. Chair, those two comments, that exchange between you and Mr. Godan, of course, he, as much as you phrase it as a question to him, but he sees an opening about your inclination. And I'm not talking about your intention. I'm saying he sees an opening in your comment about the president who's not there. And so that comment itself is phrased as a proposition that may give, well, that does give reasonable apprehension to the person, a witness in the position of Mr. Zuma.
Of course, when one looks at excerpts or extracts from transcripts such as this, it's important to have the whole context, because this would have been an exchange when a witness is on the witness stand, and that witness has put in an affidavit where he has told the story. And it may be that a question is put in a certain way because everybody understands what's written in the affidavit. So it may well be important to have that affidavit in order to have a full context of the extracts. Yeah.
We do, Chair.
Yeah.
We do. I think Chair should be comfortable that we've read and we followed and we watched that interaction.
Okay.
And so we're not taking this out of context.
Okay.
And as I say, I want the Chair to look at them later with an open mind and connect them and say, and it may well be that the Chair, because only the Chair knows his intentions, will tell me that's not what I intended.
Yes.
And I have no way to dispute that.
Okay.
And then, Chair, that interaction with him, I would like the Chair to go through it. I don't want to read these excerpts because what I say, what I submit, they indicate is a mind that is inclined to agree with a particular witness about another who's not there. And Chair, as you keep saying to me correctly, but I need to find out what's going on, right? Chair, I'm asking you to do something very difficult. It's difficult for me, it's difficult for you. Is that, as I said, I'm not asking you to go to the extremes. In those comments and those propositions, you will find that, because you're human, you will find that in the heat of things and the outrage that you feel about the testimony, because you're human, there's a line you may cross. And the crossing of that line is not because you are a bad person or you intend punishing people. It's because you are outraged by a particular, and I've seen you outraged in these proceedings, justifiably so sometimes. So I think, Chair, what I'm asking you to do is to look objectively at your comments from the position of someone who is accused, number one, whether we like it or not, in these proceedings. This was started to get him, and that's how he sees it. And so his position is important for the Chair to take into account. Don't take into account those who love him and those who hate him because they are pursuing something else. And then, Chair, you will see that paragraph 53.7 is another quote where you put your view. It's expressed as a question. You say, would the involvement of the presidency, right at the bottom, at the foot of the page, of the presidents in the appointment or reappointment of members of boards, SOEs, have been a normal thing? Is that a normal thing or not? Now, Chair, that question, as I said, contains what outrages you, sounds like. The suggestion that the presidency would interfere, right? Because we're talking about accusations that were made before you that Mr. Zuma was interfering with boards of SOEs. So, seen in that context, he views this comment and many others as the Chair's inclination to agree with these witnesses, and that you are disinclined to agree with the counterversion. Because, Chair, I think there's a counter-version in society. There's a counter-narrative that makes the entire body politic. And this process, which is to help policy making, must not be determined by the dominant views of what in South Africa is a dominant class and its media and their views. Is that if you want to get out of this morass of policy uncertainty, which is what your task is our ability to thoroughly interrogate different narratives that are out in society and how they lead to fraud that you are to investigate, corruption, and this thing called state capture. I keep referring to it as a separate issue, Chair, because as a matter of political science, all states are captured. All states. The reason there's a contest between classes in society, even here, is that they are contesting to capture the state. Some for good reasons, others for bad reasons. So state capture is a notion that is weaponized, comes as a notion that is designed at a time Mr. Zuma must go. But what the chair is tasked to do is to cut the veil, go beyond the different classes that contest the state since its inception, is to look at this state as we speak now is captured. This state, particular one, beyond Mr. Zuma, long gone, and elsewhere in Ukraine. But what the chair must look at is what do these forces do with the state? What is the fraud and what's the corruption? And I think these comments demonstrate a mind that has accepted a particular version that Mr. Zuma facilitated, wrongful capture of the state, that whose intention was
Let us assume that they reflect an acceptance of certain evidence that has been given. Would you accept that there would be nothing wrong with that if that acceptance is provisional? In other words, until I hear the other side, until I hear what has happened. In other words, well, maybe this version without contradictory evidence, maybe it's true, but I'll wait until I've heard all the evidence and I can change my mind. I'm open.
Yes.
In other words, isn't the fundamental thing whether whatever you think of a certain witness evidence at a particular time, that you must at least keep your mind open and be prepared to change whatever you thought once there is good contradictory evidence or arguments and so on.
Chair,
Yeah.
would I accept that?
Yeah, I'm just posing that, yeah.
Chair, intellectually as a way of engaging people, I would accept that you may hear one version and agree with it and then hear another. But here is where I part ways with your answer. Is that it's like that Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Mkhize I was talking about, who's sitting in court listening to a judge talking about the fact that she wants maintenance. It may well be that when you make a comment that you think she's a gold digger, you can say to her, you may persuade me otherwise. But it's no comfort from a judge to make that comment and say and give the explanation you're giving me. That no, sit comfortably there. I'm calling you a gold digger for now. But when you come, you may well tell me you are not. That explanation, Chair, it's sound, the explanation you give, but in an environment where you sit in that powerful position with people who sit here, others as heroes and others as accused, those accused persons do not feel that statement you make the way you say it, because for them it's not an intellectual engagement, they are being accused. And so I want you, Chair, I know it's your explanation, but I want you to look at it and see whether a judge can give that answer for commenting flippantly to someone and say, no, but I was still going to change my mind. I don't think it's a legitimate explanation to a witness.
Yes, of course, if we go back to our earlier example, much earlier, before tea break, and of course, when you make, how you make a comment is also important, If you talk about, if you contrast that example of a judge or magistrate who says, women are gold diggers, then you have another one who actually thinks like that inside but doesn't say it.
Both are wrong, Chair.
So that, yeah, I guess one needs to be sensitive.
Absolutely.
One needs to be sensitive to all of these things.
Chair, you've come to the nub. Maybe you've expanded without noticing. Unfortunately, you are no precedent. Maybe you've created precedent for this nebulous concept. Sensitivity. Because when we sit where we sit, it was not a flippant comment when I said there is something intellectually dishonest about the fact that precedent about this subject matter, we get it from people who are the subject of our criticism. They tell us how to criticize them. And so, Chair, you've come to the nub of what I think reasonable apprehension of bias stems from. It stems from a need for sensitivity. And the need for sensitivity, Chair, comes from a recognition of the tenets of natural justice. And that justice must not be done, but they must also be seen to be done. And so a witness may well, Chair, think of what you say differently if it's said by an evidence leader. So I'm saying, Chair, some of the propositions in your difficult job you're doing have been propositions that a small person sitting, and when I say small, people will say Mr. Zuma is not small. Chair, lawyers, we think our environment is easy because we are here every day. Everyone who's not a lawyer is small in an environment like this. It's intimidating. It's only nice to those who see their enemies squirm. But to a person who's an ordinary citizen, to sit in this room is no ordinary task. And so sensitivity, I wish you could bring that as an element that really, really pricks. That should guide how we deal with the apprehension of bias, that judges must be sensitive, even if they are correct. And all of these things you say here, by the way, Chair, I'm not suggesting they are wrong. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't believe them. But we don't express everything we believe. It's the reason we don't tell our grandmother his cookies are not nice. We just don't want to hurt them. So sensitivity is an important component of how to deal with small people in a powerful environment with a judge. Chair, all of those quotes, because Chair, if I don't want to, I assume you've read them.
I've read them, I can assure you.
And Chair, what I want to do to you for them, so that I don't take you through each one of them, I didn't come here to tell you misspoke, is that entire area in which we traverse your comments, I invite the chairperson to look at them the way you've just phrased why there is a need for sensitivity in an environment of this nature. And Chair, I want to suggest that we ask you to recuse yourself, mindful of the crisis it would create for this important task. And I said, Chair, we have two reliefs in our notice of motion. The second notice may seem, relief may seem contradictory to the first one, because, of course, we always put this as lawyers further and alternative relief. Chair, it's put more sincerely than we do it as lawyers out there. Because when I say we, I think my client acknowledges this. He takes this stance reluctantly. He takes it because this place, even when he is ill, did not seem to believe him. They wanted, let's see the doctor. And so in a way, it may not have been the intention of the commission. But when you say to someone, no, you say you are ill, I want to check your doctor.
But I think we must talk a little bit about that, because
Let's do it.
I saw in correspondence and in the affidavit that I'm accused of having disbelieved or not believed that Mr. Zuma was not well. And yet my recollection that I never said anything that suggested that I didn't believe it. You referred earlier on to the fact that I reluctantly agreed to the offer to meet with the leader of his medical team. That reluctance, I think, was mainly about whether we should go that far. But my understanding was that Mr. Zuma and his legal team wanted that to happen. But I expressed my reluctance even when we came back. We discussed in chambers, but when we came back in the open hearing, I expressed that reluctance, but I said I had accepted. Yes,
Chair. Now, Chair, let me do this. Let me say that I don't think it would be fair to accuse you of having disbelieved him. I think if that was put in some letter, I don't think it's as clear as that. I think, Chair, it's a series of things in how he is treated when he says he's ill. Mr. Zuma won't be believed. Even I say he collapsed here, they will say he faked it. And so in a way, you are dealing with a situation where I think that reluctance of yours to do this, as much as it may have been misinterpreted, was that it was clear that saying Mr. Zuma is ill does not convince a judge or those in the forum. And therefore, that offer was made to say, we don't know. If judges don't believe when a former head of state says he's ill, when a doctor puts up something to say so from the state, well, they may as well have a meeting. But I accept, Chair, that on its own, I wouldn't like to question that, because you did say you were doing it reluctantly. And I think your reluctance, I would like to view it as having been in good faith rather than in bad faith. But Chair, yes. And Chair, so all of these comments that I want the Chair to look at, I raise them because I think you've helped me with the case now. That I think a lot of them, my submission is that a lot of the comments you made about which Mr. Zuma complained may not be because maliciousness doesn't fit, but may have been insensitive in circumstances of a witness who's come to what he believes is a slaughterhouse, reasonably so, by the way. And so, Chair, I'm not raising this lightly, I'm raising it, I made an example earlier, Chair, the difficulty of representing Mr. Zuma and for him to be believed. A judge in this country has questioned my integrity in court for representing a client. Never happens to a white lawyer, but it happens to me. And I'm saying that on its own create circumstances for him that he is disbelieved. I've just told this commission now that our second relief, demonstrates that this is an act of frustration with the process. But it's no act of defiance of you, Chair, or this country and its citizens who need to know. What it seeks is to correct an environment that I think has been distorted by your comments, and sometimes the excitement that I've seen when people cross-examine someone they think is a scum. And I think an environment must be created for you. Because, Chair, I don't care about the people who sit in this commission behind the scenes. When this commission is reviewed, Chair, us who are close to you, who've known you rise as a brother, you will be criticized, not them. Not the agenda they are pushing behind the scenes, ethnic or racial. It will be you who will be criticized, and they will run away, and will have to defend you. And the point I am making is this. I am asking you, Chair, to look at your comments, but the second relief we seek there, I'm asking you, in your thinking about how do we remedy this situation, I said to Mr. Pretorius, I'm prepared to sit with him and look at how Mr. Zuma can have an environment here where the citizens who deserve his version can hear it. And I would like you, Chair, to creatively, together with all of us, look at that remedy and see, even if you accept that some of your comments may not have been appropriate or may not have been sensitive, I'm asking you in that second relief to look at creating an environment, not just for Mr. Zuma, maybe for others, to come here and feel they are not accused. And that is why I said to Mr. Pretorius, when lawyers sit and talk about remedy, we do that because we want to assist the judge to come to some sort of conclusion that is just and equitable. As I said earlier, I can sit down now, Chair, and you blow me, and I will review you, and it goes nowhere. It will be the end of Mr. Zuma, or I'll bring him here and tell him to sit there and say nothing. And that is a stalemate I can do. But it's unconstructive. And I want you to look at that second relief and see, having considered the things we've said. And Chair, I would like lastly to look at the statement you made this morning and see whether it's important for me and my client to look at those versions. And we will tell you probably tomorrow or any other time. Chair, I thank you for giving me this time. It's a difficult task. Probably no one has had to ask the second in command in the judiciary that they are doing a bad job.
Well, I can tell you that in 2.5 months' time, I will be finishing 24 years on the bench, and this is the first time an application is brought for me to recuse myself.
And it's brought by me.
It's brought by you. But, there's nothing wrong with an application for recusal when people feel aggrieved. It's a remedy that is available and should be considered.
Thank you,
But I was just saying that in 24 years, this hasn't happened, but there's always a first time.
In 20 years of practice, I haven't been asked to ask someone I know, I come from this village with, to recuse themselves. So I thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Yes.
And those are submissions, and we're free to have discussions with them. There is an affidavit we gave, Chair, to the extent that we take the technical approach about whose version, in terms of Plascon events, should prevail. I will hear it's there, but I would like some time to look at your statement, and we'll let you know.
No, that's fine. We are at 10 to 1. Thank you, Mr. Skakana. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Pretorius?
Chair, may I suggest that we take the long adjournment now and
Yes.
come back when you
Yeah.
direct?
Okay, it's 10 to 1. Let's take the lunch adjournment and then come back at 2.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes. We adjourn.